Hi everyone, here we've got a very basic Arduino sketch. All I'm doing is using a switch to control an LED. Turning the switch on is done by bringing the input high. That means bringing the input to 5 volts positive. Turning the switch off is done by taking the input to ground. Let's look at the sketch first, see how we've put this together. Wherever we've got the double backslashes, that's not included in the program at all. It's purely there for our comments. So you'll see here I've just made a little note. This sketch is to prove that an input, which is a switch, to pin 3 is used to control an output, that's the LED, on pin 8. Down here I've got another note saying this is the constant conditions the pins are set to. So to do that you type in CONST and then space INT. Now that is a standard setting, so that it comes up green if you've done it correctly. If you use a capital C it won't come up green, so you know you've made a mistake. And then I've given a name to my pin 8. I've called it the motor contactor LED pin equals 8. Then you must use a semicolon to go down to, or to finish off that line if you like. Then the next the next constant I've set up is the constant integer for the start button pin, and I've made that equal to pin 2. So those two are constant conditions, they won't change. Now I've gone down to the variable, and the variable will be the actual switch. Okay, and that is set up is not a constant, just an INT, and I've called that button state, and again semicolons at the end of each line. Then down here is where I've got my setup. So in my setup, let's put a comment here. This sets up the pins as an input or an output. So down in here I've just said, and I have to use these Arduino set values. Pin mode, if you get that typed in with a capital or uppercase M, it'll go red. If you use a lowercase m, it won't. So you know if you've made a mistake there. Then I'm just saying that pin mode, the motor contactor LED pin, which up here we set here as being equal to pin 8. Down here we are saying that is an output. Output has to be all uppercase, and then it'll go green. You finish off with a semicolon because that's completed. Then the next thing I'm saying, pin mode again. This time we're setting up the input, and the input we set up here was that the start button pin equals pin 2. Down here I'm saying that the start button pin, which is pin 2, is an input. Okay, I'll just demonstrate it running for a moment. At the moment my input is actually high on 5 volts and the LED is on. If I take it here to ground, you'll see my LED is now off. Okay, now my pin 2, which is this pin down here, is actually at negative or ground. Down here I go back to my 5 volts positive again, and my LED is now high or on. Okay, I'll just scroll the program down a little bit, show what's going on now. So now we go into the loop part of our program. This is the program continuously running or looping through. So I'm saying here button state, that's my switch, is digital read. Okay, so it's actually an on-off, so digital 1 or 0, and we're reading that in, being either high or low, or 1 or 0, or on or off. And that's start button pin, which is pin number 2, finish off with a semicolon. Then we're stating down here, we're saying if the button state, so that's if the switch is high, and that means if it is on or at 5 volts positive, then write out by going digital write, which is basically on or off, write that out to pin 8 and make it go high. High will be on, the LED is now on. So basically, if the start button is at 5 volts, so I'm saying there, if the start button is actually high, that's on at 5 volts, then the LED will be on. But if it's not, we say if it is, or we say else. That means if it's not, if it is not high, so we say here digital write, the pin output 8 will now be low or off, and the LED is now off. So we're saying if the switch or the push button is on, then the LED is on. Else, if the push button is off or low, then the LED is off. And down here on the program, we actually were able to observe that making pin 2, which is basically my little switch here, putting it to 5 volts positive, or taking it over to ground, turning it on 5 volts positive, or off when it's at ground. So just a little test there. It's nothing too big, but just give you a little bit of confidence if you haven't been doing anything with the Arduino in the past and you're just sort of getting into it and getting a bit of confidence. It's not that straightforward. There's a lot of really good information online, plenty of PDF material that you can download and read on all of the instruction sets. Basically, it's pretty much based on programming at C or C++, but it's a bit different. It's not as, but it's based on it. You'll see similarities. The Arduino IDE. You'll see now if you've made a mistake. So when you go to upload the sketch to the Arduino, it will come up with an error and it will tell you where your problems are. What you often find is most of the problems are something fairly basic, like forgetting to put your semicolons at the end of an instruction, or having a lowercase instead of an uppercase. Okay, thank you for watching. This is John from Auckland, New Zealand, and I'll catch you in the next one.